Hello and welcome to MySecurityTV and our Tech and Sec Weekly. This is another edition of our Bugcrowd series, our Chief Information Security Officer Perspectives. This week we're joined by George Papakyriakopoulos from Greece, the CISO and with the platform division, obviously, with Skroutz. And once again, Nick McKenzie, the Chief Information and Security Officer with Bugcrowd. Nick, thanks for joining us. And George.
Thanks, Chris. George.
Thank you, mate.
And George, look, a real pleasure to cross. I take it you're in Athens, I'm assuming. Beautiful.
Right, yeah.
Look, a pleasure to cross over to Europe and Athens. Introduce us to Skroutz for our audience here in the Asia Pacific. It's an online marketplace, but I think that we'll out of this particular session, we'll get some real insights into the global nature of CISOs and the characteristics and how they're consistent around the world. But yeah, just your role as CISO with Skroutz.
Right. So yeah, as you said, Skroutz is it's an online marketplace. It's a business model which is similar to Amazon in a sense that we list merchants and they can list their products on the website and they can buy whatever they need. We currently have more than 8,000 shops listed and more than 3.5 million active users. And we offer the whole experience. So we offer payments, the last mile, first mile delivery, all of the after-sales support, refunds, cancellations, etc., replacements, and also any other additive service that the merchant might want, for example, logistics, warehousing. So the whole pipeline, apart from actually ordering the products from the suppliers. So we have a pretty footprint. We're primarily in Greece. We're also operating in Cyprus and Romania, and we ship across Europe. So it's a European company.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how big is your team? And also interesting to know how you might have structured it.
Right. So the platform division, which security sits within, is around 45 people. So it's based. SRE is admin. The security team is currently 5 people strong, which for Greece is considered a big team. We don't have separate duties internally in a sense of separate teams. We basically are more or less generalists as security engineers. People do have focuses depending on their expertise, right? But we tackle the whole technical security spectrum as a team. And I'm also responsible for everything that has to do with governance, risk and compliance as part as Skroutz is concerned. So the team is doing a lot of hands-on work. They set up their own infrastructure as well. They manage it. We write Terraform a lot as a team. So we're not only doing like typical security stuff, but we're also doing like engineering in a lot of sense and also architecture. That's more or less how it works.
Nice, and I take it you're really at the forefront of GDPR as well over there. So I take it that's a big focus for you.
Sure. GDPR, NIS2, that just came up as well, which is the new kid on the block, and then all of the regular EU is gonna push towards our way. I mean, it's good because a CISO can use it as a good excuse to get budget, right? Which is always the struggle. So it's one thing, saying that we have this issue or we have this risk, and it's another thing that this risk will result in big fines and legal action against you. So this becomes more of a priority when you have that kind of risk.
And just to clarify, you said 5 focused on security, your team of 5?
Right.
Okay.
5 people, yeah.
Maybe talk us about the bug bounty that you have with Bugcrowd, maybe how long you've worked with them and how it's developing. One thing we're learning with bug bounties is it needs to be sort of managed, so to speak. But yeah, just introduce us to how you work with Bugcrowd.
Right. So I think Bugcrowd was the first vendor I actually onboarded when I joined Skroutz less 4.5 years ago. Basically, we were looking for a way to augment our team, and when I joined, there was no security team. Right, I was the first hire of the company, so I had to quickly ramp up my resourcing capabilities, and hiring is a long process, as I'm sure you're very well aware. So the idea was that I need people that can ramp up quickly and start providing me with value, especially on the customer facing side, because we might have gaps that we don't know about, and I'm new, so I don't know the gaps, I don't know the vulnerabilities and everything. So I need people that are very well experienced and have good expertise around web application security that I can tap into quickly until I build a proper team myself. But obviously, this keeps working as an extension of my team. So the idea was talk with the big bounty providers, see if we can get into a program that gives me that value. And I had references from other people. I had good friends in other companies that have used Bugcrowd before. So I reached out to them, and I think we quickly understood each other and our needs, and were able to set up a really nice program. So the way we run it currently is we have 2 bounties. One is a private bounty on a staging environment which is dedicated for the bounty, that you can provide access to internal systems as well, back office and all of that, so they can test without exposing sensitive data out. And then we also run a public bug bounty on our production systems, that you can do anything that a normal user could do, right? And this is the idea of keeping the bounty as close to production as possible by actually testing on production. So anything that a bug bounty hunter can do, a user can do tomorrow. So we're fine with that. We want to know about it, and we want to fix it before a user that's not a bounty hunter finds out and exploits it. So we run 2 programs simultaneously, and also we have our VDP, which is basically a way to report vulnerabilities if you're not part of Bugcrowd, if you're not a bug bounty hunter by profession, but you found something and you want to report it. You have the whole form there that conforms to the rules of the bounty program that you can use to submit vulnerabilities that you found on the website. So that's kind of the setup. As I said, the rationale was I want people 24/7 looking at my applications, looking at new features that we're releasing, and getting accustomed to how the product works, and then being able to test for complex issues, for complex vulnerabilities, and let me know before anybody else finds out. And this has worked really well.
So you're using it as a resource amplifier, really. And again, your CISO for the platform division, this is just for the platform, as you say, the web applications and the like, not for the company itself.
And this is basically the whole. No, it's the whole company. So we cover the web apps, mobile apps, the API, everything that the company has out there. It's basically under my supervision and under the bug bounty.
Very good.
Yeah,
Nick, my first reflection coming to you is, one is the international nature of the community that you work with, being able to service companies in Europe and a specialized company here in Greece, but then also the mix of public and private here as well. Just your general sort of reflection on that.
Yeah, I mean, what George described for his company is it's classic, right? Both from the testing environments and leveraging the crowd, both in a pre-prod perspective, and then obviously the public-facing program from a production environment. It's your pure classic of getting coverage from a shift left, and as much as you can shift left and shift right, right? So we see that time and time again. A lot of our customers typically do have either a private or public program facing externally to the company, and we are seeing that shift of dynamic of pushing the crowd of researchers from through the talent matching, through the matching George's profile for the internal side as well, and giving them access to test internally. That's becoming a real thing too. I think the beauty of it, of having it structured that way, is you get the amplification of finding bugs earlier in the life cycle, and obviously paying less in turn from a public perspective on the more external public-facing side.
That's a good point. So when you do the testing in pre-production, the bounties are lower, are they? Tend to be?
I think we keep them the same currently, but it depends, right? Because the idea with a successful bounty program, if I might say so, is that you don't keep everything static. So there might be a new feature we're pushing to a pre-production environment, and we say, okay, we really need to find out vulnerabilities for this new feature before it gets pushed into production. So let's double the bounty for that particular area of the application. So suddenly you get an increased payout on the testing environment, because we really want to test it before we release it in production. So the bounty basically becomes part of your testing pipeline as well, which is really awesome. You have resources 24/7, which is very hard to procure internally unless you do shifts for like application security. That's really hard for if you're not a conglomerate. And you also get people that are really experienced with your application and your business, so they can keep finding complex stuff when you release new features even before your own developers or your own security team is able to detect them, which is really
There's
good.
a couple of the learning for your internal team, how you learn out of that, in terms of how successful the program is, and then I'll come to budget. Yeah, just how you're finding your own internal uplift.
So it's twofold, right? One thing is that you basically understand what the current methodology in application testing is, because these guys that are part of the Bugcrowd community, right? They test many other applications, even like bigger organizations, newer technologies, cutting edge stuff. So the moment something new comes up, let's say a new web vulnerability type or some new type of testing. I remember a couple of years ago, it was the hot thing was race conditions on web applications. It was very hot, like it became hot. Would start coming the first week that this would come on the bounty program and test all of our endpoints for vulnerabilities like that. So even before we knew of the existence of this new set of testing, these guys already had the methodology for it. So it's very easy for us to learn from them and understand, what are the new trends, what we should be testing and being mindful of. This is one thing. And the other thing is obviously by pushing our own guys to also become bug bounty hunters on their own time, obviously not in a full capacity because they are full-time employees, but they can do it on their own time as a training method. On other programs as well, they can also learn from other programs or learn the approach of the bounty hunter and then increase their own skills as well, in a sense of having practical training even better than any lab or any certification could do, because you're actually testing real live production applications, right? So it's twofold in the training department.
How do you set your budgets? Do you find your budget fluctuates, or do you come in with an annual budget?
So we have the annual budget for obviously the service, the renewal, which we try to keep very well structured so we can anticipate as well. And we start with a baseline of payouts that we quickly pay out the researchers, but we usually don't get that hung up on budget because we really feel that the value we're getting from the submissions cost us way less than if those flaws were available and somebody exploited them, right? So even if you pay like 6K for a finding index, it's something that if you wasted internal resources to be able to pinpoint, it would cost you way more. So we don't get that hung up on budget. I don't think we've ever run out of budget. As long as you're sensible and you're very fair to your program and how you assign impact levels and all of that, then you can keep it under very direct control without anything, getting out of hand.
Nick, it sounds like there's opportunities there for the hacker community in terms of within the Bugcrowd platform, as George points out. Once a vulnerability comes out, they can quickly go across, particularly say web applications, and potentially go and make a bunch of money very quickly by identifying vulnerabilities on other platforms. Is that kind of how that works?
It is. Obviously, if you're a bug bounty hunter and you're in it for your motivation or your modus operandi is to make money. If you find a vulnerability in one customer's platform, you would set, and you've got access to other customers, you definitely want to try and tinker and exploit that vulnerability for the better good. But also, it's not just monetary rewards, right? You obviously disclosing that exploit or vulnerability to other customers, and they get to patch it, they get to learn from it, they get to train from it, from all the experiences that are through the submission. So it's a win-win for all, right? Regardless of how you look at it.
And I think this particular space, web applications and web, this is basically a website, that a merchant website. You face many of the issues internationally. Nick, do you find from the community there is it's a specified skill set within web apps, or do you find it's a bit of a general approach, or is it quite a specialized field?
I mean, web apps are quite common. I got to say, most of the researchers that we've got, I would say the vast majority of them would be quite talented when it comes to web app security. Of course, we've got specialists in other areas, hardware, those focusing on APIs, et cetera, right? So every person has got their own unique jam or skill, their passion that they want to sort of explore and dive into. But I mean, web is such a broad it's such a broad field to be. I wouldn't say you're a specialist in web. There's so many different web technologies, platforms. Again, how the logic's been set up as well. It's all different from customer to customer. So you can't just really make a carte blanche response and say that you're a web application hacker or researcher. Within web application security, people have got certain niches as well and skill sets.
And on this, George, do you find, I don't know how much insight you get into the actual hackers themselves, but do you find you tend to have a core group servicing you, or it does sort of mix and change? Because one question was around language as well. I noticed the website has different language access, but is language a limiter there?
I'd say we get a standard core of researchers that really love our program, and they stay there and they report constantly, right? With cycles, obviously. But we also get a mix of new people coming in, and obviously people that are no longer interested that are moving to other programs as well, which I think is good because you get a good mix of skills as well. Language, I wouldn't say it's that big of a problem. The good thing is, our site does have translation, so we can flip it to English and all of that. But even in the beginning that it didn't, I think nowadays it's very easy to translate something. Obviously you can use an LLM now, but even before that you had like Google Translate and everything. I think researchers were really fine even with the Greek sections of the site that weren't translated, and they would still testing it properly. So I wouldn't say language is a big barrier. Obviously there might be a particular researcher that doesn't work well in foreign languages, but that's mostly his characteristic rather than the program. So I think language is not an issue. I don't even think like any cultural difference is an issue that big, especially if you're a company that doesn't focus on a single country, but goes into an area like the EU, which has different cultures, right? We're all used to it. We also have Greek researchers that are joining the program, and we're very happy with it because they're also users of the site, so they have a keen interest on finding things and they understanding how it works. But we get a lot of very valuable submissions from people across the globe as well, like from Asia, guys are from the US, obviously, and from the rest of Europe. So I wouldn't say, I'd say it's a global team, and you don't need to worry about language or location at all.
The other one was the breadth of services that you get. You're finding both vulnerabilities within the platform, but you're getting some workflow, identifying efficiencies in workflow.
Yeah. It depends on how you define your scope, right? We prefer to keep the scope pretty liberal because you never know what gaps you might have not thought about that people can actually find out. And the thing is, when you have researchers that are working on your program for more than 2-3 years, they might know your web application even better than like half of your developers in that sense, because they see the whole picture and they keep testing it. So it's very easy for them to translate a single gap or a single issue or like lack of control into a more complex logic-based attack that you can basically put together 2 or 3 minor issues and create a business exploit that can actually completely subvert the flow of the app. So we definitely get a lot of these, and these are the most valuable we get. And there are also issues that would be very hard for us as a security team to identify. It would take us like a month to figure out a particular issue that a researcher might find in a week, because they know the business flow really, really well. They have tested it for many, many years, and they're very consistent at it. So we get a lot of good submissions that have very high payouts for us because we deem them very critical when a logical flow or like a business flow is detected. So we're very happy with letting them find.
Nick, are you seeing that as a bit of a trend, the work logic vulnerabilities, or trying to break it basically, and see if you can fail it?
Mate, to be honest, mate, I wouldn't call it a trend. It's just innate as part of the bug bounty business model, right? Again, I think we're sort of jamming on this before this event, but the beauty about bug bounties versus a start-stop pen test, right, which is very short and sweet, right, is the time taken to learn the business, to understand the platform, the business logic that sits behind it, how you can subvert and go through all the different nooks and crannies. You won't get that from a pen test, right? You get that from a bug bounty where the researchers and the hackers have the time to explore and to dig deep and to understand how the business operates, to then, like George mentioned, chain together multiple vulnerabilities or discover that one vulnerability which leads to a significant issue. And I think that's the point of contexture here. It's pen tests will always have a time and a place, right? For compliance reasons, to stress test an application or an asset in a given state, right? But the business logic flaws that you would get and the findings from a business logic perspective that you get through a bug bounty, highly unlikely you'll see that as an outcome through a pen test, as an example, right? Purely just because of the time it takes to uncover them and then report them, test them, validate them, etc.
George, do you have ongoing vulnerability management with Bugcrowd, or are you just responding to vulnerabilities that are found individually in terms of the scope? Do you have, what type of range of services have you sort of set up to make sure you can manage it at your end?
Right. So the good thing is Bugcrowd also does the first level triaging, right? So it's a managed bug bounty program. They have people that are well versed in these types of vulnerabilities and the whole web security, and they can guide you into how to respond to findings or how to go about, the payouts and all of that. So you get a lot of assistance and support from the Bugcrowd guys. We are also very hands-on as a team, so we tend to keep track of everything that comes in the platform and respond within the day for sure. So we don't want to let something slide, or at least if it's a complex issue, we will notify the researcher that, okay, we took note of it, we need a couple of days to test, but we'll get back to you. So we try to be very hands-on, but it's very good that even in times where we are strained on resources or we're dealing with something else, we always know that the Bugcrowd guys and people will get feedback, and the program will not freeze because we're not available for a week to respond. So this is really good, and reflecting on what Nick said and echoing it as well, it's also the pen testing part. We are also getting a pen testing service from Bugcrowd, right? The next generation pen test, or I think you changed the name now, Nick, I don't remember. But the idea is that because you have people that are really well versed in your application and your flows and how everything works, you get a lot more value if you do a structured penetration testing with a proper methodology by the same people that already know your app. Because if you bring if you bring a company that does pen test for 7 days, which is the typical thing, 7 days is not enough for the researchers to even understand your APIs and flows, especially on a complex web app. So they will test the very low-hanging fruit, basic stuff, HTTP headers, TLS encryption, cookies, and all of that, but they will miss the complex business logic flows, stitching together flows, and all of that. So doing that gets us much better value and also gives a better incentive to the researchers because they still get paid out for new findings, even if they're doing it as part of the penetration testing program. So they still have the incentive to do it. So we're very happy with delegating the pen testing part of the web app also to Bugcrowd for that regard.
One maybe final question is, what advice have you got to another CISO thinking about a bug bounty program? How did you find, it sounds like you're quite experienced at it and your team is quite a high-level team. Just what advice have you got? Is it the way you could do business today without doing a bug bounty program? It sounds like you couldn't really function without it.
For sure, it's not only the value that we describe within this podcast on how you get a resource augmentation and also you get really good value and people with really good technical skills. It also demonstrates your commitment to security, I would say. Having especially a public bug bounty, which everybody can see that you're running a program and they can see the payouts and they can see how quickly you respond and all that, gives a really great transparency to the people using the app that, this company is committed to the cybersecurity pillar. They're putting money where their mouth is. They're paying people out. They're constantly responding to vulnerabilities. They're trying to mitigate everything and fix everything that gets discovered. They don't ignore submissions. They don't ignore people that have found issues with the website. So this found externally that this company is committed to securing their users, securing their data, securing their applications. So I think this is really important as well. It really helps the organization also mature in terms of how they treat cybersecurity as a priority within the company.
And Nick, over time, I think that in my mind that's where it is now. I think it actually, as George said, reflects where you are as a company and how you treat cybersecurity seriously. Do you think that's changed over time, and that's how it's reflected now?
It's definitely changing, right? I mean, last quarter alone, we took on 300 new customers, right? If you wind the clock back 3-4 years ago, right? Just the attitude in terms of launching a bug bounty came with a lot more stigmatism.
Yeah.
But now that people like George, I mean, George has been a customer for a long time, but the public-facing point that he's said, now that people are seeing the benefits, they're seeing the value, they're seeing that it is actually, a commitment to good security practices, as George mentioned. It's snowballing, right, in terms of becoming a very common economic and a trust way of portraying your security maturity as an organization. So I would say it's now gone beyond the point in which, it's considered, or it was considered not trustworthy. It's now becoming more of a de facto standard in the industry. And to be honest, between us here, look, we are working with various, policy institutes that put forward standards that, continually talk about pen testing as being, the go forward approach for security assurance of systems. We're trying to incorporate bug bounties now as part of that terminology that they use as also another alternative, if not better, practice to put in their standards. So
this particular session, I think, highlights not just the economics, but also that the way that the business functions on an ongoing basis, more so than what a pen test would do. I think, George, you highlight the value and the trust that you have, not just in your own platform, but in the bug bounty community as well, to do the right thing, and you pay accordingly as well. So look, I think really does highlight some of the keywords: economics, trust, and then also the international nature of this particular scope as well. So there in Athens, George Papakyriakopoulos, the Chief Information Security Officer, and I won't say the platform division, but you are the CISO with Skroutz. Very interesting platform there, particularly those, if you're in Europe, check it out. And then once again, thanks for joining us, Nick McKenzie there in Perth, the Chief Information and Security Officer with Bugcrowd. That's our Bugcrowd series, CISO Perspectives. George, Nick, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, George.